Hello, everyone. I'm amazed actually and humbled to have one of the greatest digital content creators that I know
Oh wow.
in person of our Excellency, our Royal Majesty, the Queen of TikTok, Womiye Ojo. You're welcome to the Debo Taiwo Talk Show. How,
Thank you.
how are you today?
I'm good. Labor Day, holiday, so it's a chill day.
It's a chill day indeed. It's a
Yeah, it's
chill
a
day
chill day.
indeed.
It's
It's
a
a
chill
chill day
day. How are
indeed.
you?
I am well. It's been a little bit busy for me. I've had, a few recordings today as well. But of course, it's been a chill day, so just having fun.
Yay. Thank you for
Just
having me on here.
the least I could do is say thank you. And thank you, to be honest, thank you again for honoring my invitation. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Honors
Thank you.
mine.
Now we're gonna get started. Very simple round of questions. So it doesn't even feel like an interview. Let me just kind of ask you, yes, maybe some of your followers would like to know you. I would like to know you a little bit more as well. Can you just tell us a bit about your background? Just touch base about your educational background and, just a little bit of summary about that. Yeah, let's start from there.
Educational background. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology.
Oh,
And
indeed.
yeah, and then I found myself doing international human resources.
Okay.
That was peer pressure, to be
Mm,
honest.
okay.
Yes.
What would you
That
really
was
have
peer
loved to
pressure.
do?
Well, I would have really loved to do what I actually ended up doing, which
Mm,
was, yeah, I started getting my PhD in conflict analysis and resolution because I found myself in the peace and conflicts field.
okay.
Um, yeah, so I started that. I didn't finish, so I capped it at a master's. So
Oh,
now I have two masters. Um,
interesting.
but yes, my PhD that I started in conflict analysis and resolution actually is what basically led me to do my TikTok.
Interesting. I'm talking
Yeah.
about TikTok. How long have you been on the TikTok platform?
September 2022.
Interesting. So
Yes, I'm
years,
new.
in 2 years, you've been able to grow a followership of over 13,000. How were you able to do that? How easy was it for you to do that?
It was not even a strategy. I didn't even have a TikTok before. In August, I didn't have a TikTok account. September, I went on a trip and I recorded it and I made a video and I posted it and I forgot about it. And then 2 weeks later, my phone was just buzz, 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 buzz. And
Interesting.
that was my first viral video
Viral video.
over,
And
yes,
and the very first viral video, if you don't mind, was to where specifically?
Badagry
Badagry
in Nigeria.
in
Yes, so we
Nigeria.
went to the slave points in Badagry. Yes.
Hmm. Now, let's kind of deep dive a little bit. What influenced you to take a trip to Badagry and do a recording? Because from what you're saying, up until September 2022, you didn't have a TikTok account, so
Mm-mm.
probably potentially you weren't recording all of the stuff that you're beginning to do right now. What influenced you to take that trip to Badagry, and why did you do the recording in that way? You could have gone still and just learned and just went back home. Why? There must have been a purpose. What influenced that
That's a
decision?
good question. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that. Well, I'd always wanted to go, first of all, but I was never in Nigeria long enough to take that trip.
Mm,
I was about to leave, and I was like, no, there is no, how can I be a Nigerian in Nigeria and I have not been to Badagry?
mm,
And so when I went there, honestly, just being there was so overwhelming. And I have put out educational content before, but nothing on our history, nothing
mm.
on like the colonial history. So when I got there, it was very overwhelming, to be honest, Abel. It was so overwhelming, and I was like, this has to be shared. I
Interesting.
cannot know all of this on myself.
Mm.
So, like after 5 minutes of being there, once our tour started, I started recording, and I was just like recording little bits. To be honest, it was more so to share with my family and friends, not
Mm.
for TikTok.
Now for TikTok.
Not for TikTok. It was
Because I
like
was
for
gonna ask you,
family and
for you to have
friends.
been recording, like I've seen that video, I've seen that clip. I think you posted it on LinkedIn recently.
I
So
did, yes.
I saw that on LinkedIn, and I'm like, okay. And apparently I'm just getting to know you as well on that level, on
Mm.
what you do. But I was, stunned as to the detailing in you taking those recordings. And I'm almost tempted to say you've been doing that before now or before that time.
Uh, Not really. I haven't been so I like videos. I do like creating videos. But what you saw was just raw footage. It wasn't for the intent, like it wasn't for the intention of putting it out there publicly. What like the video, all the mashup you saw was just me just saying, "Oh, daddy, look." Like from
There,
my dad, from my mom.
there
It
was a
wasn't
part,
for
there was a part that I saw I think you took your sandals or your slippers, whatever you're wearing on, off, and then
yeah.
you walked them in the bush or in the water. I can't really remember now. And I'm like, I mean, from what you're saying right now, I'm like, wow, there must have been some, maybe, I don't know, maybe nature calling you, or maybe the universe, like they say, or maybe God inspiring you to do something that was kind of extraordinary. You know why I say this?
Hmm.
Okay, so you probably didn't know, but I was born in Badagry. Yeah,
What?
I was born there. I am from Ogun State. Anyways, this interview is about you, know me. So, but anyways, I was born in Badagry. I
Wow.
schooled in Badagry Grammar School.
What?
I went to Lagos State University, Ojo. So I kind of have a fair idea of how that environment looks like. I've been
Hmm.
there, and okay, so I went there once when I was in JSS1 in 1998 to that particular, which will deep down a little. We went to the four-story building. We went to all of this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I got married in 2019, I took my wife there again. So it was like after
Amazing.
many years, we went there like maybe like 21 years after. But I appreciated the visit more. But I took pictures, like I said, shared with family, like you were saying to your point, shared with family,
Yeah.
and it there. And when I saw your video, I'm like, dude, you took some of videos, right? Why didn't you do
You
it?
could have done that.
Right?
I don't know. I was angry, to be honest. I was really angry.
I
And
was too.
yeah, and I'm an empath, so I absorb energy
Mm,
around. I feel a lot of energy around me.
mm,
When I got to that part where I took my shoes off,
mm-hmm.
honestly, it was just look at that. It took us how many minutes to walk from that water
I didn't
area?
do that part though.
Oh, you
Ca-
didn't?
Yeah, I did not do that.
It took me 20 minutes just to walk from that lake to the
Mm,
ocean. It
mm,
took them 3 days to do that same walk, and people died along that route.
mm,
I could not but take my shoes off in honor of
mm,
that
mm,
journey that they took. Like I felt the ground.
mm,
I felt it, and I I was just so angry when I got home. Oh my God. First of all, you're from Badagry. You know taking that journey is so long.
mm-hmm.
The road is horrible.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
got home, I was filled with so much anger.
Mm,
So even like in the video when I was doing the voiceover, it was a lot of like emotion. And
mm,
it's like, who does this? Who
mm,
does this to children, to
mm,
babies? Do
mm,
we not understand our history, like what happened to our ancestors? How are we
mm.
just so gentle about this? And then yeah, and then that video was birthed. But even when I put it on TikTok, I just put it there like, oh, okay, all right.
And then it went viral.
Yep, and then that happened. Yeah. I remember opening my phone and seeing 999,999. I was like, what is that?
Interesting.
99,999 likes with a plus.
Interesting. Interesting.
I was like, is my phone broken?
Oh my God. That
I
must
think
have
my
that must
TikTok
have
is
blown you
crashed.
away. How did that make you feel? How I mean, waking up eventually next morning or after a couple of days, like you said, and you saw over about 100,000 likes. How did that make you feel?
Day one, I was very confused. I thought maybe I was hacked. I was very confused, but then I saw the comments pouring in. By the time it reached 900,000 likes or 900,000 views, yes, by the time it reached 900,000 views, I was like, okay, people really like this. People really want to know more. And that's what encouraged me to do more.
Wow, that's impressive. And talking about doing more, what has been some of the challenges that you faced, doing what you do, going out there to seek history about the Black, race, about, the Dark Age. What have been some of the most, crazy moments I would say that you've had?
The biggest challenge, to be honest, that I've faced is censorship, believe it or not. Because some social media platforms, they tend to flag or like suppress content that
Mm-hmm.
delves into certain aspects of Black history. For
Mm-hmm.
example, TikTok.
Hmm.
I have been shadow banned before on TikTok.
Interesting. Can you
Yes.
clarify what you mean by shadow ban?
So it's when I don't even know how it works on their algorithm on their end. But then
Okay.
sometimes like things like content like that, people don't want to see it. And so sometimes I get some people who report my
Your
content.
page.
Yes, like I
Content.
do get some racist comments on my
Mm,
page, that people saying that what I'm putting out there is not real, or it's false, or it's been
mm,
falsified, or it's been
mm,
exaggerated.
mm,
So yeah, so there's that issue. There is
mm.
definitely is that issue. And again, another challenge is trip to Europe. Um, Also for colonial, I call myself a historical traveler, by the way. I coined
Interesting.
it.
Historical traveler. I love that.
Yes.
I love
I
that.
did I did get support from a mentor, and that's the first time I'd actually gotten. But I will say, because now I've put this thing on my head and I do
Mm,
want to do it because a lot of people have questions and things have been birthed from this one small thing that I did. So that's definitely, the censorship and then just a lack of monetization options for educational content. Things that are monetized are more about like fashion and
mm,
day in the life and all of that. But that is, it makes it kind of hard to sustain this kind of work.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, also just like pushing back misinformation. Because while I am here trying to put out the truth and trying to put out, just facts, there are other people that are saying that the slave trade never happened.
That's well, that's almost
And
impossible that anyone would even want to narrate that.
yes,
Like
some
the
people are saying that
fact
not just that it didn't happen, but that it was what's that, consensual? It was
it was a mutually agreement. Yeah.
exactly, and it was a
Well,
peaceful transaction that happened. So
well,
I see that out there, and
mm,
it's just a
mm.
reminder why this work is important.
Well, so that point you've said now, even though I really don't want this conversation to center 100% on that topic, but what you've just said right now about being mutually beneficial at the time, you know, might there might be a little bit of some elements of truth to it, but again, I don't know if you've seen, you might have, this journey of the African colony, if I'm not mistaken. It was a documentary released on Netflix by Oladipo Shashore, I guess, is a lawyer. He went to the UK, very similar to what you did, but he's focused more on how, um, the Westerners came into our shores, and obviously the Dark Age, but of course how they took over our Lagos as a colony,
Mhm,
and then how they took over the rest of Nigeria from 1860 up until shortly in the 1900s, just before the amalgamation was made in
mhm,
1914, and of course, up until the end when we got independence in 1960 and all of that stuff. That documentary kind of like details, to your point, that
mhm.
even though it would seem like it was mutually beneficial, these guys would come in first of all to make you feel like you have to agree to our demands, even though
Of course,
we'll
of
do
course,
whatever we want to do, right?
yeah.
To your point, you have a point, but the pendulum can swing either way because people
Yeah,
will
and then
talk.
when you say mutually beneficial, so you're talking it's if that argument is mutually beneficial for a group of people against a minority.
Mm,
So it's some individuals. It wasn't a representation of the whole.
mm,
So even in one of my videos, I talked about um one of the leaders. Like he was the person who was, trading the enslaved and all of that. It was just that one person.
mm,
It wasn't like the rest of Nigerians or Africans. We said,
mhm,
oh, yes, we also want it. It was
mm.
not peaceful. It was an aggressive transaction.
That was
So
aggressive indeed.
for me, in no way at all was it mutually beneficial because
Okay.
even what we were trading was not balanced. It was exploitative. It was them coming and forcing, especially like if you go to Kenya, just saying put your thumbprints, and they're putting their thumbprints and they're signing away their lives, signing away
Mm,
their land. Communication was not, it was nothing was transparent about what was happening. They didn't know what was going on. They're coming with their English language. We had our own languages too, our
yeah.
own traditional language.
Yeah.
Communicate to me. It was no at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Communication would have definitely been bizarre if you come to think of it. However, just to kind of, again, not like I'm pro anything, I'm just like,
Yeah.
just kind of, get where the pendulum swings. If you think about it, realistically though, Womiye, even before the invasion of the Westerners into our shores and all of that dark age happened,
Mm,
within our own community, for example,
mhm,
at that time, it was very easy for you to see. So, for example, the kingdom of Oyo could go in to conquer, for example, maybe the kingdom of Abeokuta, for
Yes.
example. And if that happens, if Oyo, if assumingly, this is just to assume, right? So if Oyo
Mhm.
conquers Abeokuta, for example, they sack the king there, and they kind of take ownership or
Yes.
get all of those people and then make them, those, what those kind of people went through, like slaves and all of that stuff. So
Mhm.
people would say slavery had always been within our domain, even before
Mhm.
then. And if you watch movies like Spartacus and all those kind of movies as
Mhm.
well, I think it was just what was happening generally at that time of age. What do you think about that? When people make the notion or assessment of, hey, slavery was also a thing amongst
Mhm.
people of color at that time within
Mhm.
themselves. What do
Which is true, it was. But I think people need to exercise more empathy in what they are discussing.
you?
So Dahomey, Oyo Empire, and then I take over their people, and then we move from Dahomey to Oyo. Are we comparing this to being abducted by by a race that, first of all, they hadn't even seen or encountered this race before? So these people are coming and are leaving them, after brutalizing them and dehumanizing them, leaving them in rooms where they're in a crouched position for
That's not the right.
3 months unending.
Crazy.
3 months unending. They're pooing there, they're peeing there, they're being raped there. And then after that, going through a strenuous journey of getting to the seaports.
Hmm.
After that, you're put on a ship, of which now we know this was a ship. They had no idea. Before they embark on the ship, they're being forced to either take a concoction or being forced to walk around a tree so that some kind of jazz and disorientation takes place. They're being forced to rid themselves of their identity and
Hmm.
swearing to the land that they will not come back.
That's a different ballgame
Are
of
we trying to compare these two experiences to each other?
hmm.
For me, it's unbelievable actually, because you make a very good point. People do make those comparisons to say, oh, but there was slave trade. Excuse me? You know what? Maybe I still had a chance to run away and go back home
Hmm.
if it was within my land of
Within
Africa.
your line. Hmm.
If it was within the region, maybe I still had a, but this is happening. And so even when we're on the ship for months and months, people are getting sick. Men are being forced to stay at the bottom level, and then women are on top, so that the slave enslavers, they have an opportunity to take the women, easier access,
Hmm.
and rape them. The people who fall sick, throw them off board. Come on. And then they still get there, and they're still dehumanized even further, ripped off of their human rights, having to work for centuries. Like, this was over 300 years in another man's land, and you're serving your work. No, I can't even go on. But those experiences are not comparable at all. In my mind, when people make that comparison, I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Good point.
It's just like aliens coming now. Just imagine
Hmm.
aliens come here, and
Hmm.
then, God forbid, this kind of experience happens, and they're like, oh no, but in the human race, we also, oh, would you rather go there? No,
No.
thank you. I'd rather stay here.
End of story.
I
End of
would rather
story.
stay here. I don't know what they're gonna do to me there, and that's how it was. It
Hmm.
was them not even seeing white people, and white people never even encountering, this race of people, or this particular tribe or ethnicity. Yeah, I don't like making that comparison.
Thank you for your summary on that, though. So we'll switch it up a little bit now, Womiye. Just to kind of touch base to say, in what ways do you think social media is helping to reshape how people, especially the younger generation, view Black history?
It's been a
Mm.
game changer providing access to information, especially now in these days where Black history is being ripped out of curriculums in school, which
Yeah.
is just mind blowing to me as to why.
Was going
Not
to
only
be my follow-up question as to what do you think about that happening,
it's
especially
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Why are they not owning up to what their ancestors did? It's
Mm.
history. It happened. We're not blaming you. We're blaming your forefathers for what they did. But then I can't even point too far, because even in Nigeria, like,
That's the
they're
point I
saying
was asking. History is not being
history is
taught.
it's not being taught. It's so silly to me. And that's why on TikTok I call myself your Black history teacher. I
Mhm.
don't care. I will be your Black history teacher. So for the younger generation, it's shifting the narrative from what was being traditionally taught in schools to a more inclusive, deep, and accurate portrayal of our history.
Hmm.
So, TikTok and Instagram, it helps creators like me to reach a wider audience, a global audience. And it helps also to spark conversations that might not have happened otherwise. So you
Otherwise,
find people in diaspora, not even diaspora, you find African Americans being exposed to their history, and they're
to the
like,
honest truth, yeah.
what are you telling me? And why didn't I learn this in school? Thank God for TikTok. So it's
Mm.
really empowering to see young people engage with history in real time, question what they've been taught, and just take ownership of that learning journey.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm glad that, with social media and, people like you doing what you do, people like you and people like you doing what you do, it's kind of getting people more sensitized about Black history and getting people to know, hey, this is what happened in the Dark Age and stuff like that. So great, some great work from you again, Womiye. Appreciation from me to you as well, right? All
Thank
right.
you.
Now, I know you mentioned that you do some of those trips. You go to most of these trips by yourself, self-paid. But of course, social media platforms, when people generate content that gets a lot of likes and a lot of reviews, there's also a tendency that you can make money out of it. What would you say, not to ask you specifically how much was been the maximum you've made, but have you gone to the bank smiling that, okay, well, I did this trip and then I made maybe times three of what I spent on my trip? Has that happened before?
I'll be very honest with you. I have not monetized.
Okay. Now you see the look on my face. I'm like, okay. Now the
You
question would be, what's stopping you from monetizing, and why haven't you monetized?
when I found out that he was not supportive, he was not who he said he was. He was a version of what I wanted, and he was pretending throughout, and he was asking multiple people to marry him. And it wasn't just me.
Hmm, that's